I would like to think too that it may seem to be so diverse, but we were, and I'm sure there were many moments where we were gasping and wondering, am I understanding any of this? But we were talking with each other, and there were many resonating themes. People were whispering to each other. We do agree, I think we can agree, that this is not a positivist session. It was very good that Professor Poblador started out by saying that complexity theory is very much post-positive today, no post-positivism in here. And really, when you think hard about it, many of the methodologies we've been using and the terminologies have made that transition into a post-positivist era. No? For instance, Neil, you were mentioning deconstruction, and I was whispering to Professor Giselle, and I said, but we have that in the natural and medical sciences. No? When you talk about many of the methods, you're really deconstructing things. You talk about PCR, for instance, which is, you look at the chain reactions, you're not breaking down things that are inert. You're looking at them in process. They're dynamic, and you're trying to understand not their nature, but the patterns and the way they come together. And that is what complexity theory is about. We certainly saw a lot of ambiguities, and we accept that there are uncertainties and paradoxes. And ambiguities are important. It fuels the whole enterprise that we are here in universities for. The quest for knowledge deals with ambiguities and uncertainties. I think we've come to the point of realizing that you cannot resolve all those uncertainties at any time. The metaphors are wonderful. They have been coming up repeatedly. And maybe a task of UP is to explain to people that even in the most hard of sciences, there are no claims to exact representations. No? I have many people who think that the viruses that appear in textbooks are real. That's how they actually look. No? And I say, no, they're like the lamps that you have on Rojas Boulevard, the ones which are going, mercifully are going to be replaced soon. No? The first time I saw them, I said, those are HIV. That's the human immunodeficiency virus. No? The lamps really look like viruses, at least the graphic representation. I'm glad that Professor Yap talked about how our understanding of cancer and banking, interesting, the two coming together. Was it a Freudian thing, cancer and banking? A lot can be drawn from organizational, look at me, I'm going to talk about organizational development, complexity theory. No? Professor Pernia talked about population, and really population is about reproduction, which may seem very straightforward, very biological, but we're seeing that there's so much that is unpredictable in there. In a way, the anti-family planning groups are right when they say that even without family planning, the population growth rate is dropping. No? Of course, they don't know it's dropping because it's made people are resorting to abortions, no? Precisely what they fear so much. No? But our contribution in UP, I think, is going to be in bringing complexity theory and showing that it can be applied across the many disciplines, and that we might have a better understanding and grasp of its applications from organizational development to an understanding of physics, chemistry, and biology. Okay. I promise it would be short. Let's go into the open forum. The idea that we had at the beginning, early this morning, is maybe we can entertain get three or four questions first. You can state who you want to answer, but of course, everyone is free to jump in here. But by asking 3 or 4 questions, we can see if they are linked so that maybe some of the answers can tackle those questions at the same time. So who wants to start out? Yes, I'm sorry, we have to acknowledge President Emenso is here. And he has been attending previous discussions as well.
I would like to ask Ernie Pernia, what is the relationship within his lecture and the theme of this symposium, especially the issues raised by Dr. Poblador? Because the way I look at it, your approach to economics, your analysis of economics is pretty conventional and at odds with the conceptual framework suggested by Nick Poblador. And so I would have wanted to hear you react to the issues he raised from the standpoint of your discipline. I think this is, Nick described UP as a moribund institution. Now, I think I'm not sure if that is a correct description, but what we have here, I think, is the decline of the sense of community. We're able to communicate with each other, debate with each other across disciplines. We seem to be talking along parallel lines, so we do not have any conflict, and at the same time, we do not. The issues are not linked. There's no debate. There's no conversation across disciplines. I think that is the problem that we have, and it is well exemplified by this. But what I observed, that Dr. Pernia is talking about demographics and economy, and quite different from that of Dr. Poblador. I came here to listen to how you react to Dr. Poblador.
Okay, good point. No? We'll take two more questions and then see how they want to respond. Anyone else wants to field the question? Dr. Mangahas? Dr. Mangahas, my eyesight is...
Hello. I'm coming to this lecture having just read an ethnography entitled Perfect Order, Recognizing Complexity in Bali. And I think the problem he highlighted there is that it's hard to see complexity. It's invisible. So that is part of the reason why you need to cross the disciplines, because the issue in complexity is the distance. In order to see the pattern, you need to go very, very close or back up far, 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 far away. And I think that's one of the reasons. And one of the issues that came out of there is the issue of cooperation. Why should people cooperate? So it goes back to game theory, and even if it's in your own interest, sometimes you don't see that it's in your own interest. So that is the problem. And anyway, in that ethnography, he was able to connect to aesthetics, religion, as well as ecology and irrigation, pest control. All of those things he was able to link, but only by talking with computer analysts, ecologists, and the people themselves. What brought it about was an issue related to development. When the Green Revolution was introduced, it disrupted the adaptive system that was highly complex. So because of development, something that was working very, very well, suddenly it went out of sync, and big issues were raised. But without this disruption, nobody would also have raised all the hullabaloo. And so I think the big issue here is how to see it, and how to think about how closely or how far away we should back up in order to see complexity. I don't know if I have a good question there, but maybe you could just react to this.
But you did bring up the importance of it's how to see and how to think. Maybe, can you give us the author of the book, Perfect Order? Maybe people want to look it up.
J. Stephen Lansing.
J. Stephen...
Lansing.
L-A-N... Lansing, okay.
Yes.
Thank you, Maria. In case you want to respond to her, do feel free. No? One more comment or question? Yes,
I'm Art Alvindia.
Yes, indeed.
I'm an economist. I like the way you started to summarize the discussion, as you were saying, that it was a transdisciplinary, there's an attempt for us to come up with a transdisciplinary framework. But I think I'd like to add that I think what's probably more important is that more than just listening to how the different disciplines look at the problem of institutional and social change from their functional viewpoints, is how do we integrate and come to a decision on institutional change, and how do we direct social change and bring about the right kind of institutions that would rebuild our society. And so I like the idea of, the discussion brought up by Dr. Garcia, and we brought up consciousness. Because I think consciousness is the point of convergence. So I think we should really look for a point of integrating the different levels of and ways of consciousness. By this I mean, how does the man in the street who sees institutional and social change, how does he begin to understand what is happening in society that is ruled by different disciplines, different systems, social systems? How do the businessmen see it? How do the policy people see it? How does the academe see it? This is the problem that we are faced with. Human choice is the point of convergence. So all of the things that we talked about here must somehow come to the point of how do we make the choices to be made by our leaders and our people today. You know, the problem, as an economist, economists like to pride their discipline as the integrative social science. You know, we have even come out with the declaration that we have come up with the theory of rational choice. Can you imagine that? We talk of a society that at the end of the day we're saying if you want the tough decisions to be made, the rational decisions to be made, follow the economist. And don't listen to the politician, don't listen to the businessman because only thinking of his selfish interest. No. Morality, no, because you're just after self-interest, maximization of self-interest. This is the kind of animal that you're dealing with in your systems, and a unit that only thinks of maximizing its own self-interest. I think in biology you might call it a cancerous cell. It only seeks to maximize its self-interest, and in fact, in this country, in our country, it is dominated by the rich, by the powerful and the rich, the oligarchs, and they're just maximizing their self-interest. This is the kind of system that we're dealing with. Now, the challenge to us, I don't have any answers now, but I think what I'd like our forum, and I hope this continues, that we get to focus on the real issues that deal with it. Otherwise, like the economists who have come up with the theory of rational choice, we are going to alienate ourselves again from what is really happening. We need an integrative discipline, and we have to come together on this thing. An integrative way of looking at it, an integrative way of how we use freedom, how we use our freedom, because this, at the end of the day, is the way we will be reckoned with.
Thank you, sir. I think we can go to the panel now. Some of these were really comments. We could start with Dr. Pernia. I think everyone will want to say something in response to the issues raised.